Welcome back to another episode of the Outsider Sports Baseball Podcast. Corey Jason here, alongside the crew, Ben Mandel, Dylan Mel, John Pauline, bringing you guys some more baseball talk. And I'm going to start it off with something that really kind of got under my skin. The Yankees this week were involved in two very minor scandals, but ones that annoyed me nonetheless. So, Domingo Germán during Saturday's game was dealing, just lights out, just mowing down the Twins left and right. Best start in years. And the umpires had a little issue with his hands. Now, we come to find out that it wasn't sticky stuff or anything like that. It was, he had too much, they thought maybe he had a little too much rosin on his hands. And the rosin combined with the sweat, because it was really hot that day, kind of created a little tacky substance. Nothing illegal, fully within the rules. But the umpire told him after one inning, hey, just go wash your hands off and you're good. You're good. Then he kind of comes back out. The umpires start looking at his hands and start feeling them up. And this is where people kind of get attention brought to it. The umpire's like, hey, your hands are still sticky. What's the deal? And the interpreter and Boone and everybody comes out and they're like, well, he washed his hands, but he doesn't like to use the rosin on the mound. He's somebody that likes to use the rosin that's in the dugout, which, again, fully complies with the rules. So between him going to wash his hands off and coming back out, there wasn't much change, even though he did everything the umpire said. And the umpire seemed to understand and be cool with that explanation. It makes sense. But Rocco Baldelli, the Twins manager, came out all hot and heated and was yelling at the umpires. And I don't know, he showed what type of mentally weak, no sack type of guy he is. Just out there yelling and screaming about, how you got to eject him, how he's got to get out of there. And even in his post-game press conference, he's talking and he's like, yeah, I'm really glad that the umpires are going to be giving all these players leeway this year. Like, dude, come on. Stop being a baby. You were given a good explanation. Everything made sense. But no, you had to cry and complain. How could I go back and tell the guys in the dugout that, he was still allowed to play? You go back, you're the manager. Be in charge. Tell them, hey, this is what happened. And, if they don't understand it, who cares? I mean, they followed the rules. He didn't do anything illegal. You're just upset that he was sitting you guys down 1-2-3. Your high-powered offense that you showed on Thursday wasn't showing up. And that the Yankees were actually beating you like they've done for the last 20 years. So Baldelli really showed what type of man he was, and that's to say not one at all. Because he just couldn't, face the facts of the situation and that things were handled properly. Now, going back to Wednesday's game with the Yankees, they were playing in Cleveland. At the end of an inning, we had a bit of a debacle with the replay. Basically, Aaron Hicks trapped the ball for the second out of the innings and threw it to second for the third out for a double play. The umpires ruled it a catch, so double play. Inning over, everybody's leaving the field. Clark Schmidt was at that point pitching pretty well, one of his better starts this year. And then we see the play pop up over the video board in between innings. The crowd starts booing, the umpires see it, and then Terry Francona, well after the 15 seconds you have to challenge a play, decides to go and challenge it. And we know that they challenged it because when the umpires announced it, they said Cleveland is challenging the rule in the play. And then afterwards, they say Cleveland retains their challenge. So we know that Cleveland challenged the play outside the 15 seconds of allowance in order to get that done. And Aaron Boone came out yelling hot because they overturned it. And basically, he was saying, yeah, you got the play right. And the Yankees ended up giving up more runs that inning anyway before they were able to get out of the jam. But you didn't follow the proper rules and the proper channels. MLB after the game came out and said that they handled things properly and that it was the Yankees that challenged it, which Aaron Boone after the game said the Yankees certainly did not challenge it. They purposely didn't because that would allow Cleveland to replay it and get more time to challenge it because they would have 15 seconds after the challenge to then challenge the play. So a whole lot of stuff that doesn't make sense. The Yankees did end up winning that game, the rubber game of that series, but just a lot of convoluted backtracking by the league office, basically saying, hey, the umpires are wrong, but we're going to say they're right because, you're not allowed to protest games anymore. They quietly got rid of that a few years ago, and there's no recourse for misapplying rules anymore. So I want to put this out there for you guys. In either the Herman scenario or the replay scenario, do you guys have any takes on it? How does that make you feel? Was either thing misapplied, or how are the rules appropriated there?
Yeah, Corey, as the other Yankee fan on the podcast here, you touched really a lot on the Herman situation, so I don't want to dive too deep into it. I just think it's a shame that that was the story coming out of the game when Herman has been a guy that's been in the Yankee system for a little while now, and there's always been questions of can he be dependable? And this may have very well been, to my memory at least, his best start ever, right? 11 strikeouts, one earned run, no walks, 6 1/3 innings pitched. These were like serious, really good starter numbers from Herman, which the Yankees desperately need right now with all of their injuries. And it sucks that the story coming out was Rosenbag in the dugout. Is it cheating? To speak on the replay, that's the one that really annoyed me the most because the whole thing is what's the point then of having the challenge play rules if the umps can just change them whenever they see fit? And I know we're going to get into some other umpire rules later and with the pitch clock and stuff, but either be by the book or allow for changes, one or the other. And in this situation, you can't just award Cleveland additional time to replay because you messed up. They didn't challenge in the 15 seconds. It's moving a long time.
I agree here. I think that they need to either change the rules so that way teams can just challenge whenever, as long as it's challenged before the next pitch, or you don't let Cleveland challenge there. I understand you got the play wrong. You want to get the play right. So, okay, you can challenge up until the next pitch. You're trying to increase pace of play. That's why you cap that limit now down to 15 seconds. Well, these teams, guess the pitchers are going to try to quick pitch, and on plays like that, who knows? There really are just a whole bunch of things that can be changed, though. We hate the pitch clock. I think that's been pretty much asserted on this podcast by most of us, and then these challenges as well. What is the league doing? Rob Manfred doesn't even seem to know. These umpires are not consistent. We had a lot of the other older umpires left. A lot of new guys are in. They're trying to change the rules in the process. There's a lot of confusion, and I think that this league really needs to figure it out because it's not something that can continue throughout the season and you expect fans to just ignore.
Yeah, well said. They're trying to change things, and they're expecting people to turn a blind eye. Something though we can't turn a blind eye to is Stanton is on the IL again. Giancarlo Stanton hits the 10-day with a hamstring injury. He spent about 40% of his time with the Yankees on the IL. And as a Stanton believer, it's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow, but I still believe in him.
Yeah, Corey, it sucks. And, my level of concern here on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say is about a 1. The Yankees, they've just been overly cautious all early in this season, and I don't blame them for being so, right? You have some depth pieces that you want to try and work out. Who's going to get roster spots when Harrison Bader's back? This allows potentially more time for that if Stanton's on the IL, and you're just figuring out the roster. The Yankees have no problem winning games, missing pieces in the regular season. We're seeing that right now. This is ultimately so you could test out the bench utility players, see who's most likely to be on the roster, and keep your major stars like Stanton, like Rodon, Severino, Bader, all of these guys that they've been overly cautious with, healthy for October. It sucks to see Stanton go on the 10-day IL, but overall, I'm not too concerned.
Other news we also have, Brett Beatty of the New York Mets gets called up, finally. Bad Bunny started a sports agency. I don't know if you guys saw that. He's got a couple guys under his agency now, Wilmer Flores, Santiago Espinal, Jonathan Daza, plus a couple prospects, the Dodgers' Diego Cartagena, and the Giants' Marco Luciano. So he's got a couple names in there. I wonder how this agency is going to blossom in the league.
Yeah, I think that it's something that can be really special. I think a lot of those Spanish players coming up through the system are going to want to join this. It's going to be something that helps them feel a little bit better and a little bit safer in terms of what they're getting into, just because it's a little bit more recognizable. Now, I do want to touch on Brett Beatty being called up. I mentioned this at the beginning of the season when the Mets sent him down. If they didn't feel like he was going to make an immediate big-time impact, why waste the year of service time? He's coming up now as we head towards the end of April. It's going to be someone who will have the chance to play third base. Eduardo Escobar has been struggling. He didn't really stand out too much outside of the month of September last season. So Brett Beatty's going to have a chance to fill one of the few holes that this Mets lineup has, and that's over at third base. So definitely exciting to see one of the Mets' top prospects, not the top prospect because Alvarez still technically holds that. So really exciting to see both of them up here and hopefully making an impact.
Now, also, we have Trevor Bauer getting back into baseball. Bauer is making his Nippon League debut in their minor league system. Bauer suspended for a pretty long time, parts of like 2 or 3 years, under the league's domestic violence policy. That's a whole nother separate conversation about how that went down. But also the Rays, they finally lost a game to Toronto, so there are no longer any undefeated teams in the league. Max Scherzer, he's got soreness in his arm, so his next start is pushed to Wednesday. So that's something to look at with the Mets rotation, how the injuries seem to be piling up a little bit. And if age is catching up to a guy like Scherzer and Verlander, who has yet to make his Met debut. Plus, guys, I want to talk about this, the pitch clock and ovations. To me, what happened with Bellinger is an indictment on the whole pitch clock system, and pretty much the textbook reason why it should be booted from the league. The people who came up with it and decided to implement it should be banned from baseball forever, not even allowed to step foot in a stadium. They shouldn't even be allowed to watch it on TV because of how much detrimental harm they're doing to the game. But basically, Cody Bellinger came back to the Dodgers in their game with the Cubs, right? And he got a standing ovation from the crowd. It was a great Dodger. They loved him there. And during that ovation, as he was taking it all in, he was assessed a strike. So he started the at-bat 0-1 because the pitcher was technically ready. A batter needs to step in the box and be looking at the pitcher with about 8 seconds left on the pitch clock. Now, the umpires, they're not given any leeway with this either. It's not like the umpire could have seen what was going on and said, hey, I'm going to let this ride. They're told as soon as it happens, they get a little buzz in their ear, and they have to do what it says. So they're really making a donkey out of Rob Manfred, so to speak, because just how embarrassing is it that players aren't allowed to have ovations from the crowd that take a while? Like, imagine Albert Pujols coming up after hitting 700 last year and not being able to soak in the crowd because he has to get in there to hit. Just, come on, what are we doing? One, why is there even any pitch clock going into the beginning of an at-bat? If you're trying to add it to get pace of play going, add it in between pitches in the same at-bat. Why is there any necessity for in between batters in general? Just why? Let guys have their rituals and come up to the plate. You're not going to lose much time. Games are getting close to being under 2 hours as it is. So what is that really going to harm if you allow guys to get up to the plate and just have a normal beginning to their at-bat before you throw a wrench into everything with the pitch clock? But I want to hear what you guys have to say about this, because I still hate the pitch clock in its entirety, but this really gets me angry because a guy like Bellinger, who's beloved by Dodger fans, should be allowed to be appreciated by the fans without having to worry about starting off in a hole to begin with.
Yeah, Corey. I know Ben mentioned that he believed the podcast as a whole really was against the pitch clock. I personally enjoy the idea of the pitch clock, but obviously we're seeing that there are some flaws. I do want to, just say it is early on in the process. The MLB and Rob Manfred specifically don't ever deserve the benefit of the doubt for the ability to implement new things and actually have a good process. However, I liked what you said. Maybe start the pitch clock after the first pitch is assessed. That way these moments can happen. Perhaps that's a rule that gets implemented going forward. Or maybe give the umpires some leeway. Like you said, they're just told when to issue the strike or when to issue the ball. Maybe give an umpire some leeway for moments like this. I'm not sure what the exact method for this is. However, if umpires are allowed to make up a rule on the fly that the Guardians are allowed to challenge a play after 3 minutes, then maybe they can make up a rule on the fly that Cody Bellinger's allowed to enjoy a standing ovation for 10 seconds.
Well, that's the big thing, and you hit the nail on the head there. Baseball is losing some of the moments that really make it our national pastime. This is exactly what people who are not fans of the pitch clock are saying is going to happen. These are things that baseball has said it wasn't going to affect, and it is going out there and affecting them. You know what? You want a game under 2 hours? Watch a different sport. It's just not baseball.
I think as of now, as the pitch clock rule stands, it's just not gonna work. They're gonna have to rework it because eventually, when playoff ball comes and the pitch clock's there during the playoffs, it's just not gonna feel right because the games are already feeling rushed. And I mean, now some games when they're like low scoring games, like it's 0-2 and nothing's really going on, it's like pitch clock's not too bad to have there to keep the game moving along. But when it gets a tight game going to the ninth inning and it's like, and it like every pitch counts, everything counts. It's like, and it just, and you're rushing it. You lose what baseball is about. And I think it's only a matter of time until one of these teams, like eventually toward the end of the season, it's only a matter of time at the end of the season until one of these, some team loses a big game to a pitch clock violation. And there's going to be a big talk about changing the rule then.
I just hate that we have to have this conversation because it wasn't broken. The system wasn't broken. If you just laid out a mandate from the league to teams saying, hey, let's just pick it up in between at bats. Let's try this out first. Let's try to speed it up a little bit. Then none of these things would even have to happen. But the league decided we don't want to leave it in the players' hands. We want to have a mandate. We want to be known as the most, progressive rule-changing administration in baseball history. And yet they're falling flat on their face. They're not actually finding what the issues are because something like the pitch clock isn't going to bring more people into the sport because it doesn't change the sport fundamentally. It's the access. That's what's really important. Why are people in Illinois or Iowa blacked out of 7 major league teams? Why can they not watch them on streaming or on TV? That's the real issues, and that's something that the league office really needs to figure out. But before I get into a long-winded tirade about everything wrong with the sport I love, let's get into the studs and duds because a couple of these guys are performing just as well as the pitch clock, and that's to say not good. So let's start it off. John, give me your stud and give me your dud.
My stud is going to be Brendan Lowe has been an integral part of the Rays and them getting to where they were with their win streak. His last 7 games, he had 9 hits, 4 home runs, 9 RBIs, 2 walks, and a stolen base to boot. He just had a great week, absolutely amazing week. And then my dud is going to be Sir Anthony Dominguez. He's been having an abysmal year so far. He's rocking a 12.7 ERA, and he basically went from being the Phillies closer to a guy that when they put him in, you worried, and you're worried he's going to give up a bunch of runs, and you don't even want to see him out on the mound anymore.
All right, Ben, let's head to you. Who is your stud and who is your dud?
My stud is Pablo Lopez, pitcher for the Minnesota Twins. Now, Corey, this is someone who we talked about extensively during our preseason talk with, the big trade, sending away the batting champion in Arias to Miami for Lopez. And I talked about how this guy really can go out there and pitch and is someone that was very special for the Marlins. Well, he went out through 7 2/3 innings to start the week, only allowing 3 hits and 2 runs, 10 strikeouts. Then pitched against the Yankees on Sunday. And, while he did go and take the loss, he allowed 7 hits, just 2 runs and 7 strikeouts across 6 innings against a really good lineup. Pablo Lopez has been very special in everything the Twins could have asked for. Now going into my dud, it's the closer for the Astros, Ryan Presley, and he's just had an abysmal start to the year. He only threw 1 1/3 innings this week, 3 hits, 3 earned runs, only 1 strikeout. He suffered a loss, 0 saves. Ryan Presley has just not been good this year. He still is yet to pick up a save. This is someone that a lot of people were expecting to be a lockdown guy once again for the Astros. Just has not been there to start the year. ERA over 8 across 6 innings so far.
Now, how about you, Dylan? Stud and dud.
Yeah, ironically, my stud is actually the counterpart to that Pablo Lopez deal, and I'm going to go with second baseman for the Marlins, Luis Arias. I mean, I could end the statement here at he hit for the cycle this week, and that's good enough reason for him to be a stud. But he's actually batting right now over 511 in the first 14 games, and this hasn't been done since Barry Bonds in 2004. That's how good of a start to the year he's having. Batting wise, hit for the cycle this week. The Marlins got a really good hitter for their lineup, and honestly, this trade may look as one of the most fair deals I've seen in a long, long time. And for my dud, I have Javi Baez. Javi Baez has kind of been on a decline for a really long time now, but he's batting under 150 to start the year over the last week. It's just been a sore sight. He doesn't even look locked in on defense, the base running. You hate to see it because he was one of the league's premier up-and-coming players, but he's just been a dud for a while now, and he was a dud this week.
For me, my stud, Bobby Witt Jr., Kansas City Royals, one of the nice young stars of the league. He's 12 for 22 over the last week. That's good for a 545 batting average. He's also had, not counting Sunday's games, he's had three hit games in a row. It's a pretty great stretch right there for him. My dud, Michael Wacha, San Diego Padres. His start versus the Milwaukee Brewers, he went 4 1/3 innings, gave up 11 hits, 7 runs, 2 home runs, a walk, and 3 strikeouts. Pitched to a 6.06 ERA, just an abysmal start. And I'm not even that. And, I'm not upset about it just because I picked him up in fantasy, but because I've always thought he had good stuff dating back to his Cardinals days, and he's just fallen off a cliff. But moving on, let's get into our top 10 rankings. And I kind of want to start it off. Ben, I want to hear why you included the Cubs in your top 10, and also how come the Mets made it in this week, but they weren't in your top 10 last week?
So, yeah, I'll start with the Cubs. And the thing with the Cubs and going into my power rankings is I went off of a few things, record and run differential. With weekly power rankings and it being so early on in the season, we don't have too much to go off of just yet. I don't want to penalize teams for having a good start but not having high expectations. So a team like the Cubs, they're 7-5. They are 4.5 games back off of the top spot in the league, technically, in Tampa Bay. They have a plus 16 run differential. When you look at teams like Cleveland, they're 9-6, but they're a -1 run differential. That means the Cubs are scoring runs. The young guys are playing well. Guys like Nico Horner have stepped up and stepped in well. He's gotten that extension and proving that he can play. Ian Happ playing well. This is a group of Cubs that I don't necessarily think they'll be in the top 10 throughout most of the season, but right now they've been playing very well and they certainly deserve to be there in my opinion. When I look at the New York Mets, the reason why I put them in this week and did not have them in last week is they showed me more. They went out there, they beat the Padres 2 out of 3 games. They went out, took care of business so far in Oakland. Pete Alonso is playing great. He can be an MVP candidate if he keeps this up, tied for the league lead in home runs entering Sunday. The pitching is also holding up so far. I know Scherzer's start was pushed back, but I'm not too worried about it. They would have pushed it back a little bit more or put him on the injured list if it was something more serious. Sounds like Verlander's on his way back as well. And while Senga may not have gone a full 5 innings against Oakland, I still have liked what I've seen out of him, and I think he can be a very good piece in this rotation. David Peterson and Tyler McGill, I feel like I know what I'm getting out of them, and that is the biggest thing. They'll be consistent. You will be in games that Tyler McGill and David Peterson pitch at this point. And some other great news, Edwin Diaz, he says he's shooting for a return this year and could be big if this team does make the playoffs, because in reality, that's what you need him for. Just get in. And then if Edwin Diaz is somehow able to contribute this year, that's amazing. Brandon Nemo's an on-base machine. And now Brett Beatty coming up to hopefully fill one of the few holes on this roster. What's there not to like about the New York Mets?
Yeah, now let me just run out what the Outsider Sports crew, what our rankings were. Going from number 1 down to 10, Tampa's 1, Atlanta's 2, Milwaukee 3, Yankees 4, Minnesota 5, Toronto 6, Dodgers 7, the Mets 8, Padres 9, Guardians 10, the Rangers, Astros, and Cubs all receiving votes. Now, Dylan, you had the Rangers in your top 10. You had them at 8. What's the thinking behind the Rangers, and is this a sustainable level of play for them?
Yeah, Corey, the sustainability, that's still a question for me because coming into the season, the Rangers were one of those teams that we discussed as a potential AL wildcard team. They have the pieces there with the pitching, with DeGrom, Eovaldi, Perez. And to be honest, the pitching hasn't been that great thus far to start the year, but they're still first in the AL West at 8-6. The run differential is right now at plus 12, which is a little bit above average, but good enough to get them in that first place spot while the Astros are struggling. They're 4-2 in their last 6 games, and Corey Seager's been off to a fantastic start for this year, batting .359 in the early going. And yes, it is early, but that's what they paid him all this money to do, to be a superstar. A little underwhelming he was, in my opinion, last year. He's coming out hot this year. They'd love to have Marcus Semien pick it up. He's batting .237 currently. But Adolis Garcia, this guy's been a power machine for them, 3 homers, 14 RBIs. We knew that they had the lineup to cause problems, and that's what it's doing. If the pitching from DeGrom and Eovaldi can pick up, this Rangers team could be very, very scary. And with the Mariners and the Astros coming out to a slow start, this spells well for Texas to potentially make a playoff push this year.
Now, John, you had the Twins at 9. It's lower than anybody else in the Outsider Sports crew. What's your thought process behind that? And do you think the Twins could eventually move up on your list, or do you see them falling down a little bit?
I think the Twins' 10-6 record is a little deceiving just because of the teams they played. I mean, they played the Royals, the Marlins, the Astros, and the White Sox. And the Royals are at the bottom of the barrel. The Marlins aren't too high up either. And the Astros are just not playing good baseball right now. Like, they're underperforming horrendously, the former World Series winners. And the White Sox, they're okay, but they're not top 10 team right now. And they split the series with the Yankees now. So I just think where I have them, I think they're lower, but I think they're, right where they should be. So I think their record is a little deceiving just because of the teams they played. But I think if they keep it up this week and, maybe win a few series, get a few series wins and sweeps here, I think they could move up and maybe break the top 5 for me.
Yeah, and I just want to open it up now. Yankees, Phillies, Mets, any thoughts on our teams that you guys kind of want to put out there? Because I know the Yankees are a team for me that they're playing as well as they have to start a season in years, but they just don't feel like they're dominating. How do you guys feel about your teams?
Yeah, Corey, I'm going to piggyback on the Yankees talk. We talked about them to an extent earlier, so I don't want to go too in depth right now, but their record isn't reflective of how dominant they've been in terms of lack of dominance, like you mentioned. Garrett Cole, he's really looking good to start. I picked him to the AL Cy Young. As of right now, a month in, he is that. But they're just not healthy. And they're still finding a way to win, whether it be a guy like Frenchie Cordero stepping up or Aaron Judge, LeMahieu still doing excellent work. They're just geeking out wins with a limited roster. And I think this team's going to be very, very scary come June, July, once the full team's back out there.
All right. Now let's move into our weekly series highlight. This is going to cover April 17th all the way through April 24th. Little Monday to Monday action. The series I want to highlight, the Angels go to New York and play the Yankees in the early part of the week. That series will start Tuesday and run through Thursday night. And the reason I want to highlight it is, one, I'm going to the game on Tuesday. Very excited. I tried to plan it out where I would see Cole versus Ohtani. Life had a different aspect, look at that and laughed at me. I missed both those pitchers by one start each. Cole pitching on Sunday, Ohtani due to pitch Monday in Boston. Hopefully there's a rain out there where Ohtani will pitch Tuesday versus the Yankees. But I just think the way the Angels are playing, the Yankees are a team that'll be a good barometer to see where they're at, because the Yankees are a team that are expected to make the playoffs, whether they win their division or not, but in general should be a playoff team and be a good force come October. And if the Angels want to be a playoff team, they need to be able to beat teams like the Yankees on the road, especially, and when there's not such a great pitching matchup. Like the series starts off Clark Schmidt versus Griffin Canning. So the Angels need this series. They need to perform well. And the Yankees haven't lost a series yet to start the year. So they look to keep that streak going in that series. What other series do you guys have out there that you think should be highlighted?
Yeah, Corey, again, continuing to talk on an AL West team, I want to talk about the Astros series starting on Friday, the 21st, a little Apple TV series. Houston travels to Atlanta. Now, Houston's been off to a slow start. We highlighted this at length, with Bregman being a dud the last 2 weeks before this, Presley being one this week, and overall them being out of our top 10. However, they have a real rough stretch coming up. They got Toronto, Atlanta, and then Tampa Bay. If they can't pick it up by this Atlanta series, which I'll be looking for them to do, they're going to fall into a hole which could allow a team like Texas, the Angels, or the Mariners to get a lead that, especially if it's the Mariners, from what we know about them, the Astros could end up being a wild card team because of a really, really slow start.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Dylan. Another series I want to look at, and it's a couple of teams who are struggling right now, and it is the Phillies and White Sox. They're going to meet in Chicago to start the week. This is a 6-9 White Sox team and a 5-10 Phillies team. Records are similar. They're both teams with a lot of talent who are underachieving to start. The Phillies a -27 in the run differential, while the White Sox are a -19. Two teams looking to right the ship. Let's see who can do it.
Series I'm excited for is the Mets at the Dodgers series starting Wednesday. And the particular matchup I'm looking forward to is the Wednesday one between Scherzer and Syndergaard. Considering Scherzer is just coming off some shoulder soreness, and his start got pushed back to Wednesday. So it'll be interesting to see how he does, because he's been off to a little bit of a rocky start this year too. And also Beatty will be up too, so it'll be interesting to see how he does too against the Dodgers, who are a very good NL National League team.
Yeah, also to throw in there about Noah Syndergaard, John. This is a guy who dodged the Mets all year last year when the Angels came to town, when the Mets were in Los Angeles, as well as when the Philadelphia Phillies were playing the Mets. Syndergaard has had his starts pushed back. He did not want to face them. I cannot wait to see how this plays out if Syndergaard actually does take them out against the Mets.
Yeah, Ben, you took the words right out of my mouth, but I wouldn't count on Syndergaard pitching against the Mets. He's scared. He's been scared. He'll always be scared. I'd be shocked if he ever throws a pitch against them, just because he can't handle the noise. Luckily for him, that game is in LA, so if he did pitch, it wouldn't be the same, but he needs to pitch a game in New York in front of those fans, because he left on bad terms, and the fans, rightfully so, have a lot of animosity for him. But that's going to do it here for the Outsider Sports Baseball Podcast. Keep tuning in every week. Check us out, outsidersports.net, the Twitter at outsidersports3, plus YouTube and TikTok, just search Outsider Sports. But that's going to do it. For Ben Mandel, Dylan Mel, John Pauline, I'm Corey Jason. Have a good one.